Chapter 13. Mental Atmosphere. Our dynamic individual places himself in a receptive attitude towards the great universal will, and in a positive attitude towards all else. In this way he really becomes a most active center of power, which becomes manifest to all with whom he comes in contact. He may not realize just what he is doing and may know nothing of the truth herein, but still he feels that he is in touch with something that aids and assists him, and which gives him strength and dynamic force. He may talk about his luck or his lucky star, or he may secretly believe himself specially favored by Providence. But the fact remains that every positive and successful man feels underneath it all that he has something back of him. And this belief takes form in action and causes him to manifest that air of calm, positive power, and self-confidence noticeable in such men in every instance. You will readily see from what has been said that the personal atmospheres of persons depend upon the character of their mental states, and are the result of mental currents emanating from them. Every person has his or her own mentative aura, or body of radiant mentative energy, which flows from them in all directions. These mentative atmospheres affect the people with whom one comes in contact. You know people who seem to carry with them an atmosphere of feeling which affects a room full of people. This atmosphere may be positive or negative in its effect, that is, stimulating or depressing. All of these things arise in the way which I have mentioned. It is related of Rachel, the great French actress, that although she was not beautiful in form or face, still she had that indescribable charm of personality about her that caused everyone to consider her a beautiful woman. So great was her fascinating charm. That which so many called personal magnetism, as distinguished from personal force, consists of this mentative atmosphere, or radiant mentative energy, which induces in all within its field a feeling of similar emotion or vibration. The charm of the fascinating person is accounted for in the same way. It is all a matter of the mentative currents inducing feeling in others. The power called fascination, which has been known in all times and countries, arises from the same cause. It operates by the strong mentative currents pouring from one's mind and inducing mental states in others. This mentative force emanating from each individual creates a mental atmosphere around him which often extends a considerable distance from his body, especially in the case of strong individual, whose mental atmosphere is felt when they enter a room. Persons whose personality is weaker have a mental atmosphere extending only a few inches from their body, and which is scarcely perceptible to those coming in contact with them. The man who feels himself to be a dynamic individual carries with him an aura or mental atmosphere of positive strength, which is plainly felt by those coming in contact with him. People say about such a man that he has something about him which impresses them. It will be worth your while to study this mental atmosphere of some strong man with whom you come in contact, for now that you have the secret of the matter, you may take some valuable lessons from him. I cannot very well describe this air to you, for unless you have met a man of this kind, you will not understand it. But it is a very different thing from the pompous, self-sufficient, self-important, fussy air and demeanor manifested by the cheap imitators of these great men. The dynamic individual does not tell you how great or smart or important he is. He lives for his cheap imitators. He makes you feel his strength by his very manner and atmosphere, without saying a word. He has that something about him that people notice and wonder at, and that something comes from his conscious or unconscious relation to the universal will. The little fellow who thinks he is one of the big ones believes that his strength comes from his personality, and sooner or later he stumbles because of this error. But the real big ones of life know better. They may not understand it all, but some way they feel that there is something back of them from which they are able to draw strength and power. And believing this, they are filled with courage and daring and radiate their power on all sides. They may talk of their lucky star or special providence, or else believe themselves to be specially favored of God. But no matter what may be their special interpretation of this something, they all recognize its existence and trust to it. And this conviction and realization gives to the strong individual that air of calm, positive power and self-confidence that impresses those with whom they come in contact and which forms their mental atmosphere. And in giving you instructions in the art of building for yourself a positive mental atmosphere, I can do no better than to refer you back to the first principle, and again bid you to realize that you are a dynamic force, a center of power in the great universal will, having the dual attribute of willpower and desire force. In short, that you are a living dynamo. If you will but get this realization firmly fixed in your mind, you will automatically create for yourself a most positive mental atmosphere that will be felt by all with whom you come in contact. So first, last, and all the time, build up this realization. Say to yourself, I am dynamic. Then think it out, dream it out, act it out, and of course, always realize what it means. You are the channel through which is pouring the universal will, and in the degree that you allow the current to flow through you, so will be the power you are able to manifest. When you wish to manifest a special degree of power, just let this statement, I am dynamic, flame out in vivid letters in your mind. When you feel that you are being approached by some other person of strong will, whom you do not wish to influence you, just bring this statement into effect, and you will actually see the effect of it upon the other person. He will feel your strong mental atmosphere and will cease trying to affect you. And even when there is no special need for making the statement of power, it will be well for you to keep it burning bright within you, for by so doing you strengthen your realization, and your mental atmosphere reflects the inner mental state. So much for the general mental atmosphere. As we proceed, we shall see that the dynamic individual creates a special mental atmosphere around him by his mental states, depending upon his will or desire at the time. Not only does his will and desire affect other persons directly by means of mental currents, but mentative induction is also set up by the mental atmosphere without any special effort on his part. In this place, I wish to call your attention to the importance of always maintaining your positivity as a means of mental training. Do not allow yourself to become negative to others, even when there is nothing lost by so doing, for by this neglect you create a negative habit which will cause you trouble to overcome later. If a person comes into your presence and his personality seems likely to dominate or overpower yours, by all means interpose a mental resistance right then and there. It is not necessary for you to manifest the same in words. That would make you look ridiculous in many cases. Nor is it necessary for you to give any special physical expression to your mental state. Simply look the person in the eye and carelessly and without any special effort, at the same time making the mental statement, I am dynamic. And you will find that your positivity will rise until it is equal with his, or your feelings of negativity will disappear. In exceptional cases, you may add mentally, I am more dynamic than you. It will be well for you to practice the creation of special mental atmosphere in order to establish the habit, and thus render it easier to avail yourself of the same on special occasions. Opportunities of all kinds will present themselves to you in everyday life. The gist of the matter is to surround yourself with a mental aura of such a nature that people will act towards you as you wish them to do. A few examples may help you to get a clearer idea of what I mean, so I herewith give you the same. I know a lady living in Chicago was constantly complaining that people were always running over her on the state street. She said they were always crowding her off the sidewalk and pushing, bumping and jostling her in the most annoying manner. She asked me for instruction as to what thought she should use to prevent individuals from so acting. I answered that I did not think it was necessary to consider the separate individual in the case, but that she should treat the crowd as a whole by means of a protective mental atmosphere. I then advised her to build up a mental atmosphere around this statement: people respect my rights, they will not unduly impose on me in the street, I deny the power of the crowd to impose on me. And she followed this advice, and in a short time had built up a protective mental atmosphere which acted almost magically upon the crowd, who stepped aside and gave her a full right of way on the pavement. She would simply go on her way calmly, serenely and undisturbed, and the crowd let her alone. I must add that I think that the original trouble arose from the subconscious dislike of crowds and extreme shrinking from people, the result being that this dislike acted almost as does fear, and really attracted to her the interference of people. The new mental atmosphere dispelled the old one and gave her an additional positivity besides. In this connection, I would call your attention to that remarkable psychological fact that fear acts as an attracting force, in a negative way. If you want a thing very much, you attract it to you, and if you fear it very much, you do likewise. This apparent contradiction has bothered many students of the subject, but it seems very plain to me. I think the explanation is that in both cases a vivid mental picture is held, and the attraction results along the line of visualization, which always tends to materialize the mental image. Another case from actual experience. Another lady, also a resident of Chicago, complained that the shopping assistants in the great department stores would not treat her courteously, but would keep her waiting without paying her any attention, and in other ways would treat her like a human doormat. She said she would not have minded this so much if other women were treated likewise, but that while she was ignored, others would receive the greatest attention, the shopping assistants falling over themselves to wait upon them. I told her that she had gradually built up around her a mental atmosphere of expectancy, that she had fallen into the habit of expecting such treatment, and consequently she got what she expected. I think that in the beginning she had manifested a timid, humble, meek, worm of the dust state of mind when she entered the big store, which somewhat overawed her, and then after this drew upon her the neglect of the shopping assistants, who seemed very ready to wipe their feet on human doormats. She grew to regularly expect the shabby treatment. It was not a matter of dress or anything of that kind, for she dressed well, and, for that matter, I know women who dress poorly who never got any such treatment, for they understood the underlying mental laws too well for that. It was simply a matter of the negative mental atmosphere. I told her to brace up and create a new mental atmosphere around this general statement: the shopping assistants like me. They like to wait on me. They give me every attention. They do this because they like me, and also because I insist upon it as my right. The charm worked in a short time, and now the good lady reports the shopping assistants not only treat her well, but even take the trouble to call her attention to desirable selections, special bargains, and all the rest of it. The cure was perfect. I called your attention to the above statement. Please note that the first part of it operated along the lines of desire, force, and the latter part along the lines of willpower. The statement of the first mentioned lady, the one who objected to street crowding, was altogether along the lines of willpower. I ask the students to study and analyze each of these cases because by so doing they will be able to apply the principles in cases coming under their own observations and also in their own cases. I once directed a lady who complained that she was unpopular and that nobody loved her, etc., etc., to apply a similar method. She created a new mental atmosphere around her along the lines of the general statement, people like me, they find me attractive and they love me and like to be in my company. After a time she reported that from a state of wallflowerdom she had become quite the favorite and in fact was at a loss to adjust herself to the changed conditions, finding somewhat of an embarrassment of likings and lovings. This was a case of desire force, pure and simple. Now, do not imagine for a moment that in the above cases and hundreds of others known to me personally, the desired result was obtained merely from repeating, parrot-like, or like a tape recorder, the words of the statement. This talk of the power of mere words and all the rest of such talk has wearied me greatly. I have seen and heard so much of this nonsense since I have become acquainted with certain people who consider themselves in the new thought, that I dislike to use the words statement or affirmation. These people have imagined that by a mere repetition of words they could work miracles. What nonsense! They remind me of the Chinese and certain other people who write long prayers on slips of paper and allow them to flutter in the breeze, hoping that the gods will accept their prayers at face value, while the prayer makers are amusing themselves elsewhere. Sometimes they attach little bells to the prayers in order to attract the attention of the gods. Others paste the prayer on water wheels, turned by the streams, thereby claiming credit for a prayer at each turn of the wheel. Oh, don't laugh. Some of you are just as foolish. You've been making your statements and affirmations in the same spirit, and now feel disappointed because nothing happened. Of course nothing happened. How could it be otherwise? I have said over and over again, and now said over again and another time, that the words themselves are nothing. The real virtue lies in the feeling behind the words. If there is no feeling, there is no result. In order to get the result, you must erect the framework of words and then build around it the structure of feeling and expectation and visualization. That's the way to do it. The words are merely the skeletons. The flesh and the blood are the feelings and materialized visualization. Okay? So I will repeat it. In order to get the results, you must erect a framework of words and then build around it the structure of feeling and expectation and visualization. The ladies above, whom I have used as typical cases to illustrate the principle, did not rest content with words, for I wouldn't allow them to do so. I kept after them, insisting upon their using the proper mental exercises and methods. That's what did the work. And now I will give you the same directions and instructions that I gave them. Adapt them to your own cases and you will be likewise successful. The kernel of the process of creating the mental atmosphere lies in what is called visualization. Visualization is simply the creation of a strong mental image of the thing desired, the perfecting it each day until it becomes almost as clear as an existing material thing. Then the visualization tends to materialize itself. That is, it begins to build around itself actual material conditions corresponding with the mental framework. The statement of the words is the pattern around which the visualized mental image form themselves. and the mental image is the framework around which the actual material conditions form themselves. The lady above mentioned made her mental image of the street conduct of the crowd, and the people unconsciously felt it and built themselves around it. So in the case of the lady in the department store and others mentioned, the mental image manifested itself as a mental atmosphere and gradually materialized. The thing to do in visualizing is to bring positive imagination to see and feel the thing as actually existent in the present. Then by constant practice in meditation, the mental atmosphere becomes formed, and the rest is all a matter of time. See yourself as you wish to be, see others as you wish them to be, see conditions as you wish them to be, think them out, dream them out, act them out, and materialization will follow upon visualization, even as visualization followed upon the statement. I must call your attention to the fact that the degrees of receptivity of other people to your mental atmospheres and mental pictures depends entirely upon their degree of positivity. They respond only in the degree that they respond to other mentative influences. The strong avoid influences to which the weak yield in this as in every other phase of the phenomena, but do not let that cause fear on your part. You may make yourself positive. You have had the instruction given you, and it is now your own work to do the rest. I might write a whole book on this subject of visualization in the phase of forming mental atmosphere, but I have herein given you the underlying principles and have also given you a few illustrative examples. You must do the rest yourself. If you have carefully read this book and have studied between the lines as well as the lines themselves, you will have grasped the little details of the matter which will not be apparent to those who have not done so. Each will find in this book that for which he or she is ready, and not a bit more. I think the careful students among you will readily understand just what I mean by this. If you do not understand, then I cannot help you, and you must wait until you unfold in understanding. But I would say that a rereading of this work is advisable, several rereadings in fact. Each time that you read it, you will find something new that you had previously overlooked, and each reading will discover many hidden meanings now suddenly made plain. The man who wishes to be successful in his dealings with his fellow man must surround himself with a positive mental atmosphere. He must create an atmosphere of self-reliance and positivity that will overcome the negativity of those with whom he comes in contact. This positive mental atmosphere is that subtle influence that emanates from the strong man of affairs, and which affects, influences, and controls people to a greater degree than the flow of words which many affect, believing it to be the key of success. When you come in contact with one having a mental atmosphere of this kind, you are affected by it consciously and unconsciously. And if it has this effect on you in the case of other persons, why should you not reach out and possess this power yourself? Why should you not be a positive instead of a negative? The directions and exercises given in this chapter, coupled with the instructions given in the other chapters of the book, should enable you to develop around yourself a most positive mental atmosphere that will make you a power. But it all depends upon yourself. You must exercise your will and desire, just as you would were they muscles and you wish to develop them. The rule operates in the mental as well as in the physical world. In addition to the exercises given in preceding chapters, I will suggest the following may prove useful to some of you. In special cases, in forming the positive mental atmosphere, I shall merely give you the verbal framework, and you must build around it the mental picture, which in turn produces the mental atmosphere. But remember, Even in practicing these exercises, never lose sight of the main statement of power. I am dynamic. For that statement will impart life, vitality, and energy to other mental images and statements. Here are the statements referred to, the verbal framework around which you are to build your mental picture that you wish to materialize on the objective plane. You will find them useful in many cases. 1. I surround myself with an atmosphere of success. 2. I am positive. I have a strong will. I make a positive impression on those coming into my mental atmosphere. 3. I am fearless, absolutely fearless. Nothing can harm me. 4. I kill out all worry and discouragement. I radiate hope, cheerfulness, and good nature. I am bright, cheerful, and happy, and make all around me feel the same way. 5. I am well poised, calm, and self-controlled. 6. I have a perfect mastery over my temper, emotions, and passions, and all recognize this to be a fact. 7. I am at ease here, and all bashfulness and timidity has departed. I am calm, at ease, and feel at home. 8. People like me. I am surrounded with a mental atmosphere that causes people to like me. 9. I am master of my surroundings. Nothing disturbs me. Nothing affects me adversely. I am master. 10. I am surrounded with a mental atmosphere of protection. No one's adverse thoughts, currents, or suggestions can penetrate this protective armor. I am safe from mental attacks. I am safe, strong, and positive. In using any of the above statements, be sure to follow my advice and instructions regarding the mental images, etc., which put flesh on these verbal skeletons and make a living force out of the dry bones of words. Remember the importance of mental imaging and visualization in this matter of creating mental atmospheres. Chapter 14. Channels of Influence. In the last chapter, I spoke of the effect of mental atmosphere with which people surround themselves. You will notice that in my discussion of that part of the subject, I spoke only of the general influence exerted upon others and not of the direct personal influence exerted by one man upon another in personal intercourse. Let us now consider the channels of direct personal influence. As I have told you elsewhere, every time two people meet, there ensues a silent mental conflict or struggle for supremacy, from which one or the other emerges a victor, and which victory is fully recognized by both of the parties. This mental struggle is usually the combat between the general mental powers of the two, without regard to special mental states induced at the time. But the man who is skilled in the art of dynamic mentation goes further than this for he recognizes that he may concentrate his mentative energy into a definite shape and form, and focus the force of his mental imagery direct upon the other person with such force and power that the second person will feel the dynamic strength exerted. This direct personal influence operates along the lines of both desire force and willpower. I have explained elsewhere how the willpower may be used to awaken desire in another, and how it may also capture the will of the second person. I have also explained how desire force induces a similar desire in the second person, and also how it is often used to captivate the will of the other person. It is not necessary for me to repeat these lines. You are supposed to be fully acquainted with them. The instruments of expression. These channels of influence may be classified as follows. Number 1. Suggestive channels, consisting of A, the suggestive manner, and B, the suggestive tone, and C, the suggestive word. 2. The instrument of the eye, and 3. The instrument of touch. And all of these three forms are, of course, merely the channels of instruments by which and through which the mind power expresses itself, the channels through which pours the mental energy. Let us consider them in the above order. In the chapters on mental suggestions, you will find stated the active principles of that phase of the subject with which you should thoroughly familiarize yourself. You will see there that suggestion is the outward symbol of the inward mental state, and that it is the inner state that gives vitality to the suggestion. Get this idea fixed firmly in your mind, and always think of the force behind the suggestion. I have explained to you also that when one receives a suggestion through a physical agent, there is induced in him the mental state corresponding to the one originating the physical suggestion. For example, if you feel yourself filled with confidence, energy, and fearlessness, your outward appearance will reflect that inner state, and the outer appearance will become a suggestion to others. These others will instinctively feel that your inner state is as I have stated, and this being so, a physical suggestion made stronger than usual will produce a deeper impression on others than would any ordinary suggestion. In view of the above, you will see why it is that those familiar with the subject deem it important to cultivate the suggestive channel instruments. Beginning with A, the suggestive manner, you will see why it is that we are impressed with the manner of a man who manifests energy, self-confidence, and power in every motion, and also why we have confidence in a man whose manner indicates that he is a person used to being trusted by others. And so I might mention hundreds of examples tending to show that if a man's manner conveys the impression that he is used to being treated in a certain way, and that he is accustomed to acting in a certain way, we are very apt to accept the suggestion of manner and fall into line with the rest of the people. And if the man happens to be a good actor, we may be imposed upon and fooled by his suggestive manner. Not only does this law hold good in the case of the manner and appearance of success, strength, confidence, etc., but it also operates along the lines of the appearance and manner of failure, weakness, and distrust. Do you not know of cases wherein you have felt that certain persons were not worthy of confidence, or were not to be depended upon when strength of character was required, or were not likely to succeed? Of course you have, and you acted upon the suggestions too. In illustrating this point, I have frequently used the illustration of the two dogs, the one carrying himself in a manner betokening self-respect and an ability to prevent and resent undue liberties, and the other carrying his tail between his legs in a manner and appearance indicating that he expected to be kicked. The first dog is almost invariably treated with respect, even by the most mischievous, youngsters, while the second one almost always invites to himself the kicks, tin cans and brickbats of the young hoodlums of the neighborhood. And this illustration is as true in the case of people as in the case of dogs. You better take the hint. But, you may say, how is one to acquire the proper suggestive manner? My answer is that there is but one sure way, and that is to begin to think out the part, visualize it and act it out. In other words, if you wish to convey a suggestive manner of confidence, you must begin to think confidence from morning until night. You must also begin to visualize confidence when you have the chance to do so. That is, you must make a mental picture of yourself as manifesting confidence, and you must also begin to act out the part. Now, about this acting out, I would say that I mean not only the playing the part in your interviews with people, but I also mean an actual series of rehearsals in private, just as you would perform if you were preparing to play a part on the stage in public. You must form a mental image of how you would look and act if you were filled with confidence and were approaching people. You will find that practice will improve you very much in this way, and you will soon acquire a manner that will be like second nature and will really serve to give the suggestion of your manner to others with whom you come in contact. And more than this, it will actually tend to build up confidence in yourself. Imagine yourself as approaching strange people and then act out the part the best you know how, improving a little in ease and smoothness of action each day. Think of how the actor on the stage impresses you, and then remember that the manner was acquired by constant practice and work. And you may do the same and may manage to impress others, just as the actor does you. And what is true in the case of confidence is true regarding any character that you wish to play. Any and all characters may be played out in this way, and an appearance and manner acquired, which will give the suggestion to others. I wish I could make you realize how much there is in this method. If you could realize how some men have used it to acquire qualities that have enabled them to prey upon the public, you would realize how important it might be for you for legitimate and honorable use. In this acting out, you must remember that the practice will make you so perfect that the part will appear natural when you play it in public. But without practice, an attempt to play it in public will make one look ridiculous. Remember the illustration of the real actor, and you will have the secret of acting out. And also remember this, that in the measure that you throw your mind into the part, so will be your success. When you practice, you must throw your mind into the acting, just as you would if you were in earnest. It is the mind back of it all, remember? The second suggestive channel or instrument is the suggestive tone. This, too, may be acquired by acting out. You must practice until you are able to express your meaning with feeling, that all who hear may be impressed. You should begin your practice by choosing some simple words in everyday use, like good morning, for instance. Try it now and see how roughly, clumsily, or crudely you give the morning greeting. Then try to imagine that you are full of good cheer and energy and brightness, and then throw your feeling into good morning and see how different it seems. Practice this a while and you will soon acquire a natural, cheery, bright, and invigorating tone when you say good morning. You will not need a teacher in elocution to tell you how to do this. Try to feel the part, and you will express it naturally. Make your feelings more flexible, and your tones will reflect them. After you have mastered the simpler terms of expressions, work up to larger sentences and speeches. Try them on the chairs in your room, in imagining that people are seated therein, Speak to them feelingly and with expression until you acquire the art. You will not realize how much you may gain by such practice until you actually try it. I wish that you could hear the testimony of some people who have acquired this art. There is nothing more important in personal influence than a good suggestive tone. Think of the people whom you know, and then remember what an influence their voices have on you. Not only the quality of the voice, but the tone. You readily recognize the difference between the tone of the hesitating, timid, self-doubting person and that of the confident, self-reliant individual. There is a subtle vibration about the tone of the latter that causes one to feel confidence and respect, and which exacts obedience in a quiet, calm way, devoid of bluster or rant. If you will but think a moment, you will see that much depends upon the tone. You will see that when you say to a person, "You can," the tone in which you say "can" goes a long way toward producing the response. And so it is with the suggestive tone. No matter what it is made to express, it always impresses upon one that the speaker using it means what he says, and that is why many public men practice year after year in mastering this instrument of influence, the suggestive tone. Again, would I refer you to the example of the actor? See how he manages to throw feeling into his tone, and you may do likewise. If you will but practice in earnest and throw your mind into the work, think of the thing you wish to express, visualize it, and then act it out in your tone. You will be surprised at the rapid progress that you will make. Remember always, the tone is but the instrument of expression of the mind back of it. Many people make the mistake of speaking with the muscles instead of with their nerves. As one writer has expressed it, in other words, they seem to throw muscular force into their tone instead of nervous energy, and in so doing they make a great mistake, for the former has a dull and non-penetrating effect, whereas the latter vibrates subtly and reaches the feeling part of one's mind. Feel, feel, feel when you wish to speak impressively, and your tones will reflect the same and induce a corresponding feeling in others. The voice is a mighty indicator of the mental state within. Excepting the eye, no outward form of expression of character responds so quickly and fully to the inner mental state as the voice. The voice and the eye are the two principal outward avenues of expression of the mental states within, and both register the subtle changes and degrees of the inner state. If you will stop to think for a moment and consider the different voices of the people you know, you will see that in nearly every case, the voice gives one a clue to the character or prevailing mental state of the speaker. Every reader knows the difference between the tones of the hesitating, timid, self-doubting person and that of the confident, self-reliant individual. In the tone of the latter, there is a noticeable, peculiar something that denotes power and authority and inspires attention, interest, and respect without need of vulgar self-assertion or blustering speech. Let us listen to the tones of our dynamic individual. First, it is under the control of his will. It is loud or soft, as he wills it to be. It never runs away from him. If the person to whom he is talking to raises his voice to a strident pitch, our individual does not follow suit. On the contrary, he puts a little more force into his tone, but keeps the pitch the same, and before long, by his will, in his evenly pitched tone, he will actually force down the pitch of the other to a normal degree. I have seen many instances of this fact, and have noticed that the temper of the other person is toned down in accord with his decreasing pitch of voice. A calm, even, positive tone in which the will is apparent in self-control and in forceful effect will master the tones of others pitched in a fiercer key, and in the mastery of the voice of the other he will often effect a mastery of his will. By making captive the outer expression, ye often capture the inner man. There are two very good reasons for studying the voice of the dynamic individual. Number one, because it is by his voice that he manages to make some of the most powerful suggestions upon others. And two, because by the expression in his voice, or rather the inner impulse causing the vocal expression, he causes to flow out strong mentative currents which affect and influence the other person. So in its inner and outer aspects, the cultivation of the voice is quite desirable. You will find that the dynamic individual, particularly if he is engaged in an occupation necessitating his giving orders and directions or advice to others, has developed a voice resembling in many details the suggestive voice habitual to the practitioner of mental suggestive therapeutics. Both the man of business affairs and force and the suggestionist have accustomed themselves to speaking in a forceful, firm, positive manner, and thus fairly driving home their ideas expressed in words. The man of affairs does not know just why he does this, but his tone is the outward expression of his forceful mental state. And this is likewise true of the suggestionist, although he may have deliberately cultivated the suggestive tone at the beginning of his practice. It is somewhat difficult to correctly define and explain the suggestive tone, although if one once hears it, he will never forget it. But I will try my best to make it plain to you here. In the first place, the suggestive tone is fairly charged with the mental idea back of the words. Each word has an inner meaning, and the suggestive tone carries this idea with it, so that the hearer gets the full mentative benefit and influence of it. Do not imagine that this tone is theatrical or tragic or unnatural. It is none of these. It is a forceful, natural tone. Its expression is that of being in earnest and meaning just what you are saying. You know how you would speak if you were earnestly telling someone to do some important thing upon which much depended. Well, that's the tone, modified of course by the particular circumstances and necessities of each case. It must be in earnest, must be more or less intense, must have focused in it the feeling behind it, in such a way as to awaken in the mind of the hearer the feeling back of the words. The voice of the dynamic individual is flexible and adaptable to any mood or phase of feeling that he wishes to induce in his hearers. It may be positive and masterful along the lines of suggestion by direct command or authority, or it may be subtle and insinuating along the lines of suggestion by association or imitation, or it may assume a teacher-like tone along the lines of suggestion by repetition, in which the statement is made in a quiet, convincing way as a teacher makes his statements to his class, the repetition of which brings conviction to the mind of the hearer. Or it may take on that peculiar caressing tone which is noticed in a magnetic man of a certain type, who allure, charm, fascinate, and draw to them other people by reasons of their subtle power of charming. This power, which finds its expression largely in the voice, always reminds me of a female leopard or tiger, for the feline is mingled with the feminine in a peculiar way. The tone of the voice can be best described as caressing. When it is exhibited by one well versed in its use, every word seems to be a soft caress, and has a peculiar soothing effect upon the hearer, lulling his will to sleep and opening his emotive mentality to the suggestions and mentative currents of the speaker. In short, the dynamic individual in his use of the voice has acquired to a certain degree the art of the actor and the orator. He is able to express feeling, real or assumed, by his voice, so that a corresponding mental state is set up in the minds of his hearers, and one may acquire this art by practice. A vibrant, resonant, expressive voice may be cultivated and used too with the greatest effect in personal magnetism. As an instance of this, let me cite you the case of Nathan Shepherd, a well-known lecturer and authority on public speaking. Mr. Shepherd relates that when he first made up his mind to devote himself to public speaking, he was told by his tutors that he would be a perfect failure in such a profession, because, as he says, my articulation was feeble, my organs of speech were inadequate. If I would screw up my little mouth, it could be put into my mother's thimble. These facts were enough to discourage any man, but Shepherd rose above them, and determined to apply his will to the task of conquering these disadvantages and mastering the subject of public speaking, and he succeeded marvelously. By pure willpower, he, as he says, increased my voice tenfold, doubled my chest, and brought my unoratorical organs somewhat in subjection to my will. He became one of the best public speakers of his time. So there is hope for all of you, if you will but manifest persistency and earnestness in your application of your will. The third suggestive channel is the suggestive word. I may be able to explain this more clearly when I call your attention to the fact that each word is a crystallized thought. In every word there is an imprisoned thought, and when you lodge a word in the mind of another person, the crystal covering is dissolved, and the released thought manifests itself. And this being so, it becomes important for one to carefully choose the crystallized thought or words which he wishes to implant in the mind of another. You should study words until you are able to distinguish between those which carry a live, active, feeling thought and those less strong. Take the word strong, for instance. Does it not make you feel strength when you hear it forcibly and feelingly pronounced? Take the word kind and see what feelings it arouses in you. Pronounce the words lion and lamb and see the different feelings you experience from the differing sounds. Take the word crash and see how it suggests the crashing, crunching, tearing, startling thing for which it stands. Compare the sound of the words rough to smooth, and you will see what I mean. The only way that I can point out to you to acquire the use of suggestive words is to study the words themselves. Listen to the words used by others and note their effect on you. Take a small dictionary and run over its pages, and you will soon have a collection of good, strong, effective terms for handy use when occasion demands. A man does not have to be highly educated in the usual sense of that term in order to use strong suggestive words. Some instinctively choose vital words charged with feeling, and such make their words felt. Think over this matter. In the use of all the three suggestive instruments or channels, remember that the object is to make others feel the mental state you are expressing. That is the whole thing in a nutshell.